beginning of an ordinary day, I always thought my life was painfully ordinary. Wake up, drag myself through another day of work, come home, eat something quick, and fall asleep in front of the TV, rinse and repeat. That was the rhythm of my existence, and though it wasn't exciting, it was at least predictable. But looking back now, I wish I had appreciated the dullness. I wish I had cherished those quiet evenings when nothing out of the ordinary happened, because what came next completely shattered my sense of normalcy and left me questioning whether I was even safe inside my own skin. That morning began like any other. My alarm screamed at me at exactly 6:30 a.m. I remember groaning, fumbling to silence it, and staring at the ceiling for a moment before dragging myself up. The sunlight coming through my curtains was pale and soft, the kind of light that makes you think the day might turn out peaceful. But appearances can be deceptive. I showered, dressed, and gulped down a cup of bitter coffee while scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone. The usual news, pointless memes, random work emails. Nothing unusual. Grabbed my keys, locked the apartment, and walked out into the morning air. The street was as it always was. Cars honking, neighbors rushing, kids heading to school. Life moving forward like clockwork. Still, even as I walked toward the bus stop, I felt off. It's hard to explain. It's almost like I wasn't alone, even though I clearly was. The back of my neck prickled, and I found myself glancing over my shoulder more times than I cared to admit. But no one was there, just people going about their day, oblivious. I shrugged it off, blaming lack of sleep. I'd been having restless nights for weeks, waking up at 3 a.m. for no reason. Sometimes I thought I heard faint knocks on my wall or whispers from the dark corners of my room, but I always told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. I mean, what else could it be? By the time I reached work, the feeling had faded. My office looked the same as always. Gray walls, buzzing fluorescent lights, the soft murmur of colleagues typing away. The hours crawled by in their usual dull fashion, meetings, deadlines, paperwork. It almost felt comforting to slip back into that mechanical routine. Like the unease I'd felt earlier was nothing but leftover exhaustion. But it wasn't. The first true crack in my ordinary day came during lunch break. I was sitting alone in the cafeteria, half distracted by my phone, when I noticed someone sitting at the far end of the room. A man, tall, thin, wearing an old-fashioned black coat. His face, I couldn't make it out clearly, no matter how hard I squinted. It was like the shadows clung to him, refusing to let me see. What really unsettled me was that no one else seemed to notice him. People passed by, carried trays of food, laughed at their own conversations, but not a single glance went in his direction. He just sat there, still, silent, watching me. I blinked, and he was gone. A shiver ran through me so hard I nearly dropped my fork. For a moment, I told myself I had imagined him. That I simply stared too long at nothing and tricked myself into seeing a shape that wasn't there. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. Someone had been there. Someone who wanted me to see them. The rest of the day was a blur. My focus was shattered, my hands shaky. I kept replaying that moment in my head, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. But the pit in my stomach grew heavier with every passing hour. By the time I finally left work and stepped onto the street, night had already fallen. The air was colder, sharper, carrying with it a strange silence. And as I walked toward home, I realized something horrifying. That feeling, the one I'd brushed off in the morning, was back, and this time it was stronger. A strange sign I couldn't ignore. The walk home that night felt heavier than usual. Every step I took echoed in my ears, louder than the cars passing by, louder than the chatter of strangers on the sidewalk. My mind kept drifting back to that man in the cafeteria, the way he sat unnaturally still, the way no one else seemed to see him. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, stress, fatigue, too much caffeine. I'd used every excuse before. But the deeper I walked into the quiet streets, the more I knew this wasn't in my head. Something was wrong. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. By the time I reached my apartment building, I was practically speed walking. The shadows stretching across the street seemed longer than usual, like they were trying to trip me. My key slipped twice before I managed to open the front door. Soon as I stepped inside, I locked it behind me and leaned against the wood, heart hammering. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Not on my front door. No, these came from inside, from my bedroom. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, every nerve in my body screaming at me to get out, to run. But I didn't. I stood there in silence, straining my ears. After a few seconds, the knock stopped. I forced myself to check. My bedroom door was slightly ajar, just as I'd left it that morning. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting to see someone waiting for me inside. But the room was empty. Everything was in place: my unmade bed, the cluttered desk, the pile of clothes in the corner. Normal, safe. Except for one thing. My wardrobe mirror. It was cracked. A long, jagged line running right through the center of the glass, like a lightning bolt frozen in time. I knew it hadn't been there before. I'd looked at myself in that mirror just yesterday morning, whole, clean, unbroken. And yet there it was. The strange part wasn't just the crack, it was what I saw in the reflection. I stood there staring into it, and for a split second, I could have sworn my reflection smiled back at me wide, an unnatural 11, though my own lips had Dan T moved. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over my own feet. My pulse was racing, my skin crawling. I grabbed the edge of the bed for support, forcing myself to look again. The mirror showed me what it always did. My pale, shaken face staring back, lips tightly pressed together. Nothing more. I wanted to believe I was hallucinating, that maybe the stress of the day had twisted my mind enough to create images that weren't there. But then my phone buzzed on the desk. I jumped, snatching it up as if it were a lifeline. One new message. Number was unknown, and the message was short. Just 3 words. I see you. I dropped the phone. My throat went dry. My hands trembling so badly, I could barely breathe. It wasn't possible. No one should be able to send me that, not when I'd just seen that impossible smile in the mirror. I picked the phone back up, hoping it had been a glitch, some random spam. But no, the words were still there, glowing on the screen, taunting me. That was the moment I knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't just stress. It wasn't just my imagination. Something or someone was watching me. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the cracked mirror across the room, phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. Every creak of the apartment made me flinch, every passing car's headlights casting shifting shadows on the walls that felt almost alive. At some point, exhaustion must have dragged me into a restless half-sleep. And in that haze, I dreamed if you could call it a dream. I was standing in front of the mirror, staring into it. Only this time, the crack was gone. My reflection looked clearer than ever, too clear. The me inside the glass leaned closer, its smile stretching impossibly wide, eyes growing darker, emptier. And then, in a voice that didn't belong to me, it whispered the same words I'd seen in that message. I see you. I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping for air. But when I glanced at the mirror again, I wished I hadn't, because my reflection was still smiling, and I wasn't. The voice that called my name, I didn't go to work the next day, how could I? After what I'd seen nor thought I'd seen, I couldn't pretend everything was normal. Something inside my apartment was wrong. All morning I paced the living room, avoiding the bedroom like it was toxic. That cracked mirror haunted me. My reflection smiling when I wasn't. Shouldn't have been possible. But I'd seen it. Felt it. By noon, I forced myself back inside. The mirror still stood, crack and all. My reflection looked normal, just tired, shaken. No smile this time. I almost laughed. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it was just stress or a cruel prank. Then I heard it, Hamid. A whisper, close to close. I spun around, no one, just the silent room. Then again. This time, I knew. It was coming from the mirror. I stared at it, frozen. My reflection mimicked me perfectly, but the voice was real. Too real. My heart pounded, my breath quickened. Hamid. It came a third time, dragging out the syllables like a secret being savored. And then, my reflection blinked. I didn't. Terror surged through me. I lunged for the mirror, tore it from the wall, and smashed it to the floor. Shards of glass exploded across the floor, gleaming under the light. For a moment, I just stood there, panting. It was over. Or so I thought. Because every shard reflected me, but none of them moved with me. One smiled. One frowned. Another looked like it was screaming. They were all watching me. All wrong. Stumbled back, shaking. Then the voice came again from the shards. Louder, clearer. Hamid. I ran, slammed the bedroom door behind me like it could protect me, collapsed on the couch, heart pounding in my ears. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. Unknown number. Don't ignore me. I dropped the phone, breathing hard. What was happening? Who was sending these? What was in that mirror? Time passed in a blur. I didn't move. Every sound in the apartment felt sharp and wrong. Even the hum of the fridge felt off, like it was whispering beneath the noise. Then past midnight, I heard it again. Not from the bedroom, not from the mirror, but from right behind the couch where I sat. Sweet. Close. Hamid. Shadows that moved on their own. I didn't turn around right away. The whisper, my name, spoken softly from behind the couch, froze me in place. My chest tightened. My heart thudded so loudly, I could barely hear anything else. Slowly, I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the wall, lit faintly by the streetlight outside. But something was wrong. My shadow stretched across the wall as expected. But next to it, barely touching, was another shadow. Taller, thinner, and it wasn't moving like mine. I raised my hand. Mine responded. The other didn't. It just stood there. I scrambled off the couch, knocking over a cushion. For a second, it tilted its head at me. Then it vanished, melting into the dark like it had never been there. I backed into the corner, grabbing my phone. No messages. No missed calls. I considered calling someone, but what would I say? There's a shadow in my apartment that isn't mine. They'd think I'd lost it. I turned on every light, one by one, until the whole place glowed. The shadows shrank back. Normal again, or so I told myself. Eventually, I passed out on the couch. I woke up in total darkness. Every light was off. The apartment was silent, moonlight barely spilling through the window. And in that pale glow, the shadows were back. They crawled across the walls, writhing like they were alive. No source, no logic. One stretched toward me across the floor, stopping just short of my feet. Then a whisper right beside my ear. Hamid. I ran, out the door, into the night. Barefoot and breathless. I didn't stop for blocks, because whatever that was, it wasn't in the mirror anymore. It was in the shadows. When reality started breaking apart, I didn't go back to my apartment that night. I couldn't. I wandered the streets until dawn, hiding in the glow of street lamps and the faint comfort of strangers passing by. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those shifting shadows crawling toward me, reaching. By morning, I found myself sitting in a cafe, clutching a bitter coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. People around me were laughing, scrolling through their phones, living in a world that suddenly felt foreign to me. I wanted to scream at them, "Don't you see it? Don't you feel it?" But of course they didn't. Whatever was happening, it was happening only to me. I told myself I'd go back once the sun was high. Oh, daylight had to make it safer, right? Shadows couldn't stretch the way they did at night. That's what I kept repeating in my head as I finally made the walk back. But when I stepped inside my apartment, I realized daylight didn't matter. The air was wrong, heavy, still. It felt like stepping into a sealed box where time wasn't moving right. The walls looked the same, the furniture in its place, but everything seemed slightly off. Colors duller, angles sharper. Like I'd stepped into a copy of my home that wasn't quite real. My stomach churned as I noticed the clock on the wall. The hands weren't moving, stuck at exactly 7:13, even though my phone said it was nearly noon. I tapped it, nothing. That's when I heard the first sound. A faint scratching, not from the walls this time, but from the floor beneath my feet. I froze. The sound slithered along the boards, circling me faster and faster until it stopped right under where I stood. I stumbled back, tripping over the rug, my eyes darting to the ground. And then, impossibly, the shadows returned, even though the sun was blazing through the windows. One stretched across the floor, long and thin, but no one was there to cast it. Another flickered against the wall, moving like it was laughing silently at me. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't real. This isn't real." But reality itself seemed to mock me. The lights flickered, the air warped, bending like heat haze. The furniture around me shimmered, blurred, then snapped back like the whole apartment was glitching. And in the middle of it all, my phone buzzed again. The same number. The same cold text. "You can't run." I dropped the phone, my chest heaving. My legs wanted to move, to escape, but I couldn't tell anymore if the door would lead outside or just deeper into this nightmare. Because my home wasn't my home anymore. Reality was starting to break. The secret I wasn't supposed to discover, I don't remember deciding to move. I just found myself tearing through the apartment, searching for something I couldn't name. Maybe answers. Maybe proof that I wasn't completely losing my mind. The place looked familiar, yet wrong. The more I looked, the more I realized how many details were off. My family photo on the wall, my mother's face was blurred like someone had smeared her features with invisible paint. Books on the shelf had titles I didn't recognize, even though I'd read them 100 times before. It was like I was standing in a version of my life where nothing fit. Desperation gnawed at me. I pulled open drawers, yanked open cupboards. Nothing made sense. Items were in places I'd never put them, some things missing entirely. And then, at the back of my closet, hidden beneath a stack of old blankets, I found something I swear had never been there before. A notebook. Its cover was cracked, leather worn smooth with age. My name was carved into it, not written carved. The letters were sharp, almost violent, as if someone had gouged them in with a blade. My hands shook as I opened it. The first page stopped, my breath cold. It was my handwriting, my exact handwriting. But I had never written these words. I can see them now. They move when I sleep. They whisper when I breathe. The mirror is only the beginning. I flipped the page, my heart racing faster with every line. Pages and pages of my own handwriting filled the book, recounting things I hadn't lived yet. The shadows follow me into the streets. They speak through the cracks in the glass. Soon they won't need the reflections anymore. It was all there, everything that had been happening to me, written down before it had even occurred. The cafeteria, the mirror, the messages, and then I reached the last page. Unlike the others, it wasn't filled with a paragraph. It's just one short sentence. It's written in jagged strokes that looked like they'd been carved in haste. "He knows you found this." The notebook slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. And then, like a response, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. My entire body screamed not to look, but I did. The message was different this time. Longer. "Now you understand. This was never your life. You're only living what was already written." My breath caught, my vision spinning. The words blurred together, but the meaning was crystal clear. My choices weren't mine. My life wasn't mine. Someone or something had written it all before I ever lived it. And I had just stepped into the part of the story I was never supposed to read. Trapped between fear and truth, I couldn't move. I just stood there staring at the phone screen, the last words echoing in my mind. "You're only living what was already written." The notebook lay open at my feet, its pages fluttering as though stirred by a breeze, but there was no breeze. The windows were shut tight. My apartment was silent, yet the paper moved as if alive. I wanted to deny it, to throw the notebook into the trash, to block that number, to pretend none of this was real. But deep down, I knew pretending was useless. The shadows had crawled across my walls. My reflection had smiled without me. The notebook had predicted everything before it happened. This wasn't just paranoia, this was truth. And that truth terrified me. I snatched the notebook off the floor and clutched it to my chest like a lifeline, even though it felt more like a curse. My eyes darted to the final sentence again. "He knows you found this." The air seemed to thicken as I read it, like the apartment itself was listening. That's when I heard the sound. Slow creak. The kind of sound a door makes when it's pushed open carefully. My bedroom door. My blood ran cold. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't gone near it since the night of the shadows. I stepped backward, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, barely a whisper. Silence. I inched closer, against every instinct screaming at me to run. The door stood half open, just enough for the darkness inside to bleed into the hallway. I reached out with a shaking hand and nudged it wider. The room was empty, but the shadows weren't. They stretched unnaturally long across the walls and floor, curling like fingers. On the far corner, almost hidden in the black, something shifted. A figure thin, tall, its face obscured. The same one I'd seen in the cafeteria. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't want to look, but I had to. Another message. "Do you see me now?" My breath caught. I raised my eyes back to the corner. The figure was gone, but the shadows remained. I collapsed onto the floor, notebook slipping from my grip. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but I knew no one would believe me. No one else could see it. No one else could live what was already written. The truth was clear now. I wasn't in control. I never had been. And the more I uncovered, the tighter the trap became. The ending I never expected. I don't remember falling asleep, but at some point, exhaustion dragged me under. My body couldn't fight anymore. When I opened my eyes, the room was drenched in gray light. Morning. For a moment, I almost believed it was over. The shadows were gone. The apartment looked normal. The notebook was still on the floor, closed now, like none of it had happened. Maybe it really was just a nightmare. Then I saw my phone. Another message. Waiting. Look in the mirror. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed not to. But something pulled me step by step until I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. It looked normal. No cracks, no distortion. Just me, pale, tired, shaken. I almost laughed. Maybe I was free. Then my reflection blinked. Not once, not twice, but rapidly, unnaturally like it, was silently laughing. Its lips stretched into a wide, grotesque smile. My face twisted into something wrong, and then it spoke. Not in my head, out loud. "You were never the one watching." I stumbled back, hitting the wall. The reflection stayed still, pressed against the glass, palms flat, grin growing. Its eyes were deep voids, swallowing light. The mirror rippled like water. My reflection leaned forward. Cold air spilled into the room, reeking of dust and decay. I screamed, scrambling back as the thing that wore my face emerged, half crawling from the glass with jerky, unnatural movements. Then my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I did. It's your turn now. The reflection, no. The thing stepped fully into my world. I backed into the corner, tears running, chest heaving, crouched, head tilted, smile impossibly wide. And then, in my voice, it whispered, "Now I'll live your life." The lights flickered, the world twisted, and when it steadied, I was inside the mirror, trapped, watching. And that was the end of the story. Or maybe it was only the beginning, because who's to say what's real and what's just waiting for us in the shadows? Watching. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me until the very end. Stories like these are more than just words, they're warnings. Sometimes the scariest monsters aren't under our beds, but staring back at us in the mirror. If you enjoyed this tale and want more chilling stories that will keep you awake at night, don't forget to like this video, it helps a lot more than you know. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next story that might just haunt your dreams. I'd love to hear from you. What was the creepiest part of this story for you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, next time you're alone and you hear a whisper or catch your reflection smiling when you're not, don't ignore it. Until the next story, stay safe, stay awake, and never trust the shadows.